Thanks to the Rainonix calculator, we now know the ingredient list of the new Pokemon Cramorant. And I'm guessing you're all wondering whether it's actually worth catching or using. Personally, I don't think that this ingredient specialist changes the meta that much. In fact, to a lot of players, if you're purely focused on ingredients, it doesn't really change your game at all. For others, who can see the value in its skill though, there may be a reason to run Cramorant. Although those are more like whale strategies. Let me explain why. So these are the ingredients that Cramorant has. Cramorant can either do mono oil, so only oil in all 3 slots, or it can do mono potato, because potato can't appear at level 1, so it also counts as a mono potato ingredient farmer. It can have eggs at level 60. Its ingredient rate isn't that promising. At 16.5% ingredient rate, that means that every time a production is made, there's a 16.5% chance that it drops ingredient. Considering many other Pokemon generally hover around the 20% mark ingredient rate, for an ingredient specialist, that's not a good rate. On top of that, the frequency of Cramorant is kind of mid as well. So the combination of those 2 factors makes it really weak. But of course, there's one more factor I haven't mentioned yet: how many of a certain ingredient it drops. Considering that even Victory Bell only drops 6 potato and 4 potatoes at level 60 and 30, the fact that Cramorant drops 7 potato is a little better in this regard. But then if you add all 3 factors together, the ingredient rate, the frequency, and also the amount dropped, unfortunately, Cramorant is pretty much bottom tier. So let's take a look and pitch Cramorant against other potato farmers. So there's 2 ways we can compare Cramorant. One is we can compare it against potato farmers, or we can compare it to oil farmers. I'm going to ignore eggs completely at this point. At level 50, Cramorant produces the least amount of potatoes. Compared to its peers, Victory Bell, which is my recommendation for potato farming, which produces significantly more potatoes. Some of you may have noticed that Golem actually does even more potatoes than Victory Bell, but it comes at a cost. The cost is, well, you'll have to find another beans farmer, and currently Golem is the only ingredient specialist that does beans at level 1. So the only true mono bean specialist would be Golem. So in that regards, you wouldn't use Golem for potato. And even the current worst potato farmer, that is Mr. Mime, farms more potatoes than Cramorant. So looking at potato farming, it's actually not very promising. There are much better alternatives. In fact, if you wanted a number to reference, we simply take the number of potatoes that Mr. Mime can farm divided by the number of potatoes that Cramorant can farm, and we can see that Mr. Mime is better than Cramorant by 26%. So I would highly recommend not getting a Cramorant that focuses on potato. But maybe the problem isn't that Cramorant is bad, but that the potato farmers are really good. So why don't we look at the other option for Cramorant, and that is mono oil. Here are Cramorant's competitors for oil. If you had a triple oil Toxicroak, it would still farm more oils than Cramorant, about 10% more. Where Cramorant does beat current options is actually up against a mono oil Ditto. Is that at level 50, Cramorant farms about 5% more oil than Ditto, which doesn't seem like a lot, especially considering that, well, Ditto really shouldn't be focused on oil anyway, since there's always Toxicroak to do oils. But also, it is the only ingredient specialist that actually does tails, so you wouldn't use it for focusing on oils, especially at level 60. In fact, for Ditto, I normally recommend having level 30 as leak, but I'm not against level 30 oil for Ditto. It's just that there's not a lot of leak farmers in this game, not yet anyway, so where possible, I would prefer Ditto to have leak at level 30 and then tails at level 60. So this is not really a fair comparison anyway between Ditto and Cramorant, as Ditto is not meant to be doing the job of farming oils. So that all sounds pretty bad so far. What is the point of catching Cramorant? Even if we were to consider that Cramorant is a bit faster than Toxicroak, the problem is Flying type Berry is the weakest berry in the game alongside Bug type Berry, whereas Poison Berry is actually one of the strongest. So then it works out that the berry output in terms of strength is about the same. So besides matching favorite type berries, it still doesn't seem to make that much sense to run Cramorant over Toxicroak. And Toxicroak is also easier to catch and it can evolve, so you get an extra main skill level. So if we're not really using Cramorant for ingredients, it being an ingredient specialist, what are we using it for? Well, thankfully, Cramorant is pretty unique in its skill. It is the only ingredient specialist with the skill Tasty Chance S. The only other Pokemon that has this skill is the skill specialist Dedenne. And Cramorant's trigger rate is a respectable amount if we use Dedenne as the standard. Generally speaking, we say that skill specialists trigger about 2 times the rate as their ingredient or berry counterpart. In Cramorant's case, Dedenne only triggers about 1.5 times more than Cramorant itself, so this is a positive thing going for Cramorant. So then the question that remains is, how good is this skill? Is this skill better than, say, a Toxicroak's Charge Strength S? Now, you can't actually directly compare Tasty Chance with Charge Strength S. Charge Strength is very simple. It just simply adds strength to Snorlax. But what Tasty Chance does is it increases the chance of extra tasty. But that would mean that the power output from Tasty Chance S depends on how strong your dish is. Things that affect the dish strength include your recipe bonus, your recipe level, your extra ingredients and how much you've expanded the pot, and also what ingredients you put into the pot. For example, you could put Slowpoke Tails, because Tasty Chance S is a percentage boost to whatever you decide to put into the pot. Because in simple terms, instead of saying Tasty Chance S gives you a better chance to crit, it's actually just increasing your meal strength on average. But it increases it in a percentage-wise fashion. So if your meal strength were really big to begin with, or maybe it's during an event, for example, the current Summer Festival event where there's a 1.5 times multiplier on any meal you cook, well then, the raw strength output from a percentage increase because of that Tasty Chance will also be more powerful. And it's also more powerful during Sunday because on Sunday you get 3 times the power when you get extra tasty. I'm not actually going to go through the details of Tasty Chance S in this video because that's a very complicated discussion that really deserves its own video. But what I will do is show you extremes of an example showing that Tasty Chance S isn't really good for new players, but for long-term players who have really strong powerful dishes, then Tasty Chance S can make a huge difference. And for this example, I'm going to ignore Area Bonus because Area Bonus would boost Charge Strength S as well. I'm also going to ignore Sunday's crit just to keep it simple because Sunday has a different crit rate and also a different crit amount. I'm going to take one of the strongest dishes, Keema Corn Curry, which at level 55 recipe level, so the max level, produces 37,000 strength without any extra ingredients and without any area bonus. And we're going to compare it to a very weak dish, let's say Hearty Cheeseburger Curry, which produces 5,000 strength under the same conditions. So what I've done is I've just inputted those numbers here. If I cook the weak dish, 5,000 strength, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then a strong dish, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we want to compare what happens if we apply a crit rate to them. Now, normally speaking, there's a 10% chance for a dish to crit. So what we want to do is we want to multiply those numbers by 1.1. Why 1.1? Because 10% of the time, your dish will provide double the strength, and 9 out of 10 times, it will provide only 1 times the strength. So on average, the strength output is 11 out of 10, which is 1.1. If we apply a 1.1 multiplier to the strengths, these are the numbers that we get. But what you can already see is that the strength boost on a weak dish is quite a lot lower than that of the strength boost compared to a strong dish. So 5500 minus 5000, the original strength, you're only getting about 500 extra strength for a weak dish. And you're getting about 3000 extra strength for a strong dish. Of course, this is just the natural crit rate of the game. What we can now do is we can make it 1.14, which is a Cramorant without any main skill level investment, adding to this crit rate 3 times a day, once per dish. And again, you can see that each meal for a weak dish only went up about 200 strength, but for a strong dish, it went up about 2000 strength. Now, 200 to 2000 strength is a really big range. Considering a level 2 main skill Toxicroak would produce 569 strength per trigger, using that as a reference, you can see that a 4% Tasty Chance trigger doesn't necessarily beat Toxicroak's trigger. It just depends on how good a strength your dish actually is. Of course, you can redo this analysis at higher chance strength levels and then also compare it to higher Tasty Chance S levels. In fact, that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to give Cramorant max skill level, in other words, improving its crit rate, now to 1.2. because there's now a 20% chance of getting extra tasty. Remember, there's a base crit rate of 1.1, so it's 5500 to 6000. That is how much extra strength the Tasty Chance S is adding. As for strong dish, you add about 4000 extra strength per trigger. Compared to a level 6 Toxicroak Chance Strength S, again, that number falls somewhere between 500 and 4000. So the value of Tasty Chance S depends on how good your dish strength is. If you're not running a good camp ticket, you don't have good recipe level, you don't have good recipe bonus dishes, you're not matching the correct recipe ingredients, Tasty Chance S is not really for you. Not forgetting that a lot of the power for Tasty Chance would be stacked into a Sunday bonus, because end of week, you get 3 times the multiplier on your extra tasty and also a much bigger pot size. But that is also arguably one of the worst times to use Tasty Chance S, because there's not that many sessions left on Sunday for you to utilize that extra strength. Heck, if we're talking about something like a legendary event for whales like myself, when you get to that point, all that extra drowsy power isn't actually that useful, which we've talked about in another video. So the main use of Cramorant, where undoubtedly is a good way to use it, is to put it together in a team of Dedennes. If you already have a team of 5 Dedennes, you don't really need a Cramorant for its skill, because the goal is to use your expand pot Pokemon on Sunday night to increase your pot size for Monday morning. But Tasty Chance S doesn't stack into the new week. So what you want to do is Monday morning have numerous Tasty Chance S Pokemon running at the same time for as long as possible and stack those crit chance up as much as you can, so that hopefully your most powerful dish of that week, which is happening on Monday morning, becomes extra tasty. So if you don't have a full team of Dedennes, even if they're low skill level, well then you can sub in a few Cramorants instead. Otherwise, if it's not a week that requires a lot of oil, say curry week, doesn't really utilize much oil, I don't really see Cramorant being that useful of a Pokemon. If you really want Tasty Chance, you should be running Dedenne instead. So all in all, I think Cramorant is a pretty weak addition to this game. Nothing that anybody really needs. It remains to be a bit of a niche, because if you want to run Tasty Chance S, well then the dish type for that week would hopefully also match the ingredient that Cramorant is supposed to be farming, oils. If you don't need oils and you really just want Tasty Chance S, well then you should be running Dedenne instead, because it has more trigger rate. Cramorant does have some niches. For example, there's an argument that its ingredient mixture in its list is unique. For example, no one else does oil and potato as the mixture of ingredients All the other potato farmers do tomato potato, beans potato, etc. So if you were after a dish that uses both of these ingredients, it might make sense. One of those strong dishes is green grass salad, which uses both oil and potato. Unfortunately though, Cramorant farms oil and potato in the wrong order. Green grass salad needs more oils than it does potato. Then you might argue, well, I could just have an oil potato oil Cramorant. The problem is that level 60 obviously hasn't been released yet, but also even if level 60 is released, I'm expecting new dishes to come along that utilizes that much ingredients. Then green grass salad may not be at the top of the meta for salad dishes. And so once again, Cramorant may become useless. This is why I'm a big fan of a mono ingredient build where it's always the same ingredients. As new dishes come along, old recipes become power creeped, and whatever Pokemon you had that matched the ingredients for that old recipe exactly will no longer be relevant. So that leaves me with only one recommendation for using Cramorant, and that is if you stuffed up your investment on Toxicroak early on. For example, if early on you invested in a Toxicroak that has sausages and sausages for level 30 and 60, and now you're not farming enough oils, then Cramorant is for you because you can now hunt for a mono oil Cramorant. But don't forget that Cramorant is going to be more difficult to farm candies for, so would it just be better for you to restart investing your Toxicroak instead? Thank you for watching, guys. Hopefully that wasn't too complex. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section below.